They said I was dead for 2 minutes and 17 seconds. I don't remember the silence. I remember the falling. It was like being pulled through thick, vibrating darkness. No light at first, only pressure, like the world had collapsed into a single, soundless hum. Then my ears popped. The kind of pop you get on airplanes, but inside your soul. And then there was a snap. Like something invisible broke loose from my chest and shot upward, out of me. I looked down and saw my body. It was slumped in the corner of the locker room, next to the bench where I'd been tying my cleats. My limbs twitched once, then stopped. Coach Anthony was shouting. I saw Maddie's mouth wide open, screaming my name, Haley. But I couldn't hear a thing. It was like watching a movie with the volume turned off. People rushed in. Someone called 911. But I wasn't afraid. Not then. I felt clean. Like I'd stepped out of heavy soaking clothes after standing in the rain for years without realizing it. Everything was slow. Dreamlike. Except it wasn't a dream. It was real. More real than the smell of sweat and turf in that high school locker room. More real than the ache in my knees or the stress of finals. More real than life had ever felt before. And then I saw him. I didn't recognize him the way you'd recognize someone from school or TV. It was deeper, like remembering someone from before you were even born. He didn't speak with a voice, yet I heard him inside me. He said, "You weren't ready," but he didn't mean it in a cold way. His presence was warmth and clarity, a kind of fierce love that made every broken part of me feel seen and still forgiven. I wanted to stay. More than anything, I wanted to stay. But he turned, and behind him the sky opened. I saw the world for what it was, a web of glowing strings stretched across endless darkness. Every human heart was a thread. Some were lit. Most were dim. Others had gone completely cold. I saw devices like black vines wrapped around people's heads, whispering, feeding, numbing. I saw children scrolling through silence. Families in rooms without talking. Souls drowning in screens. But through it all, I also saw flickers of light. Moments. Little things, a mother whispering a prayer in her kitchen. An old man folding his hands before bed. A girl, alone, weeping into her Bible. He showed me that these prayers weren't just words. They were shields, torches, anchors. They held back something terrible, something waiting just beyond the edge. Then I fell again. Downward, through air, into flesh. I gasped, like I'd been held underwater for too long. My chest burned. Someone sobbed. Someone else shouted for the paramedics to keep pushing. They said my heart had stopped, that I'd flatlined. But it wasn't death I feared after that. It was forgetting. My name is Haley Carter. I'm 17 years old. I live in a small town outside Denver, Colorado. I play soccer. I'm a straight-A student. Or at least I was. Before I died. Before I met him. Before I saw what waits beyond the noise of this world. People keep asking what it was like, those 2 minutes and 17 seconds. They want light tunnels and angels and floating grandmas. Some even ask if I just hallucinated the whole thing. But I can't give them what they want. I can only give them the truth. Because ever since I came back, something inside me burns a need, a command, almost to tell this story. Not to be believed, but to remind you. Prayer is not wasted breath. It is what keeps this world from falling apart. And I know because I saw what happens when it stops. I was discharged from the hospital 3 days later. They told me I was lucky, that maybe it was a heart arrhythmia, maybe dehydration, maybe stress. They ran tests, but everything came back normal. Normal. That word clung to me like mold. I wasn't normal anymore. Not after that. I'd died. I'd seen something no MRI could detect. And now everything around me felt fake. Not in a paranoid way. More like I was walking through a movie set, and the backdrop hadn't been painted quite right. My mom tried to distract me. She brought me tea, asked if I wanted to watch reruns of The Office. My dad bought me a new pair of headphones. My little brother, Luke, even offered to let me borrow his PS5, which he never shares. But everything tasted bland. Sounded hollow. Felt wrong. School was worse. People looked at me differently. Not unkindly, more like I was a ghost that had wandered back into class. My best friend Maddie asked if I remembered anything from the other side. I lied and said no. What could I say? Yeah, I met Jesus. He showed me that the world's full of sleepwalkers wrapped in algorithmic chains, and the only thing holding back a flood of spiritual extinction is prayer. No one's ready to hear that in Algebra 2. But the silence was starting to tear me apart. Something followed me back. I don't mean a demon or some horror movie shadow. It was subtler than that, quieter. A shift in the air, in the perception of things. I started seeing glitches. Not in screens, in people. At lunch, I watched Mr. Landers, the janitor, sit in his usual corner. But his face, for a moment, went blank. Like a mannequin. Then a flicker, like static over his features, and it returned. When I passed by the mirror in the school bathroom, sometimes I didn't recognize my own reflection. It blinked slower than me, smiled when I didn't. And then came the dreams. Every night, I floated above my town, Castle Pines. A map of dim lights and tired hearts. And somewhere in the distance, a growing shadow. A sound like whispering teeth. Like millions of mouths mumbling without voices. But always, I heard one thing cut through the noise. A single voice. Sometimes a child's. Sometimes an old woman's. Sometimes mine. God, please, don't let go. And each time the shadow recoiled. It was the prayer. The prayer was the weapon. I started keeping a notebook. Writing down every dream, every flicker, every fracture in the reel. Pages filled fast. I began to pray again. At first in whispers. Then out loud. In my room. In the car. In class, silently. I wasn't religious before. I believed in God the way people believe in gravity, useful to remember, but not something you talk to. No. I couldn't not talk to him. Because the world I returned to? It's cracking. People are numbing themselves into nothingness. Their thoughts aren't even theirs anymore. I feel it, like cold breath behind their smiles. And I think he sent me back to warn them. But how do you warn people who don't even hear their own thoughts anymore? I stood in the bathroom mirror last night, stared at my own face for a long time, and then, for the briefest second, I saw him again. Over my shoulder. Not in the glass, in my soul. Just watching. And I felt it again. That voice. They're forgetting me, Haley. Remind them. I stopped going to practice. Coach Anthony left 2 voicemails, both polite. Maddie texted, "You good?" with 5 question marks. But I couldn't pretend anymore. Not when every hallway, every conversation, felt like a dream melting under a spotlight. My teachers thought I was dissociating. The school counselor used the word trauma a lot. And maybe they were right. But it wasn't the trauma of dying. It was the trauma of coming back. Because the longer I stayed here, the more I noticed the gaps. One afternoon after 6th period, I walked home instead of taking the bus. I needed silence. Not the kind filled with notifications and engine noise, but true silence. The kind where the veil thins. That's when I saw the house. On Ashberry Street. 3rd on the left. I'd passed that street 100 times. I could name every house on that block. But this wasn't there before. I was sure of it. Old. Victorian. Too tall for its lot. Windows dark. Curtains drawn like eyelids shut tight against something watching from the inside. It was wrong. Like it had been dropped there by accident. Or placed there on purpose. I stood on the sidewalk, frozen. A single thought lodged in my skull, foreign and sharp. Don't blink. I didn't. I stared until my eyes burned. The door began to open. Just a crack. I blinked. And it was gone. Not the door. The house. Vanished. Just gone. The lot was empty. Overgrown grass. An old swing sat rusting in the corner. I ran. That night, the dreams changed. I wasn't floating anymore. I was standing. Inside that same house. Bare floors. No furniture. Just dust and air that tasted electric. Like before a storm. In the center of the room was a mirror. Oval. Antique. And it was breathing. Not metaphorically. It expanded and contracted like lungs under glass. And when I stepped closer, I didn't see myself. I saw someone else. Or something. It had my face but stretched. Eyes hollowed out. Mouth hanging open in a silent scream. And behind it, a sky filled with static and flame. Then the mirror spoke. Not in words. In knowing. They will not wake up, Haley. They don't want to. The room cracked. Not the walls, the idea of the room. Like it was a memory unraveling. And as everything collapsed inward, the voice returned. You think prayer saves. But what is a whisper to the void? And then, a hand. On my shoulder. Warm. Steady. And I knew him. He didn't need to appear. His presence was enough. It flooded the dark like a sunrise through skin. And the voice of the mirror hissed. Not in anger, but in fear. She is mine, he said. And she remembers. I woke up screaming. But not afraid. Empowered. The next morning, I took my notebook and went to the woods behind our neighborhood. I fell to my knees in the dirt. No music. No distractions. Just breath. Just trees. Just sky. And I prayed. Harder than I ever had before. Not for answers. But for them. The ones who don't know they're drowning. The ones who traded silence for scrolling. Presence for dopamine. Souls for empty pleasure. And as I prayed, I felt it, like a ripple through the air. A shift. A pinprick of light piercing some distant storm. I think something heard me. But not everything that hears you is your friend. Still, I'll keep praying. Because now I know. Prayer isn't weak. It's war. The house came back. 2 days later, same street. Same cracked shutters and too tall frame. It was waiting for me like a thought I tried to bury but couldn't. This time I didn't blink. I walked toward it, heartbeat steady, Bible in my hoodie pocket. The weight of it reminded me I wasn't alone. The front door opened before I touched it. Inside, everything was still, like time had been paused mid-thought. Dust hung in the air like frozen smoke. And in the center of the entryway, where the mirror had been in my dreams, stood a figure. Not a monster. Not a ghost. A man. Wearing a suit. Face blank. Eyes black like polished mirrors. He spoke without moving his mouth. You don't belong here. I felt a strange sadness coming from him. Not evil, emptiness. Like he'd forgotten what it meant to feel. To hope. To pray. He showed me flashes. Images like flames. A boy overdosing alone in his room. A woman crying silently in the glow of her screen. A family at dinner, each one staring at their phone. And billions of mouths moving without meaning. Likes, shares, comments. Scroll, scroll, scroll. They gave themselves to the algorithm, he said. There is no war. There is only surrender. But he was wrong. Because I remembered. I reached into my hoodie and pulled out my Bible. Not to swing it like a weapon, but to hold it, anchor myself in the real. And I spoke. Out loud. In the name of Jesus Christ, I reject this lie. The house screamed. Not sound, something deeper. Like a dying thought. The man shattered like glass, breaking into code, into shadow, into memory. The walls collapsed. And behind it all was light. Not warm. Not comforting. Holy. I felt every secret part of me laid bare. Every shame, every mistake, every time I stayed silent when someone needed truth. But I didn't feel judged. I felt called. He stood at the edge of the light. Radiant, but not blinding. Wearing no crown, carrying no weapon. Only truth. He looked at me the way no one ever had. Like I was known. The world is asleep, Haley. But not lost. You must remind them what they forgot. That I never stopped listening. And just like that, I woke up. Not in a bed. In the woods. Knees in the dirt. Rain on my cheeks. I don't know how long I'd been there. I felt like I'd been baptized by thunder. That was 6 months ago. I haven't seen the house since. But I see the war everywhere now. In classrooms. On sidewalks. In faces that don't look up. In lives quietly unraveling. But I'm not afraid. I pray every morning now. Not out of duty, out of necessity. Like breathing. I don't try to convert people. I just live awake. And sometimes people ask, why do you seem different? And I tell them the truth. That I died. That I saw what's behind this world. And that the only thing stronger than the void is a whisper from a heart that still believes. So this is for you. If you're reading this, it's not by accident. You are not forgotten. Your voice still matters. Your prayer still pierces the silence. Even if it's broken. Even if it's quiet. Even if it's the only thing you can still feel. Because God never stopped listening. He sent me back to tell you. Pray.